Hello, hello. My name is Whitney Cobran, and I'm a love coach. I work with women whose love lives are disappointing or non existent. And I help them to find peace and clarity, reconnect with their feminine nature, and cultivate loving relationships. Today, I'm super excited to be talking about women's deadly dating patterns. So, with Valentine's Day coming up next month, a lot of people are going to be reminded of the importance of love in our lives. A lot of us are going through difficult times with COVID and quarantining. Uh, those of you who are single, or maybe something in between, it's complicated, or situationship, or friends with benefits, or you're the only person I can be in contact with in my circle. But anyone who's not in a loving relationship, anyone who's not completely happy and ecstatic in their relationship, um, usually there's a pattern that's happening. And so I'm going to talk about the 13 deadly dating patterns today. Now, I'll give credit where credit is due. This is from a book by Diana Kirshner called Love in 90 Days. I recommend this book to all of my clients. It's one of the required readings while they go through my 4-month coaching program. So, when people think about the love that they want, I always encourage them to break outside of their past. You don't want a relationship that's exactly like your past, most likely, because for one reason or another, that didn't work out. What you want is to find someone who is your absolute most perfect match possible, someone that you share understanding, commonality, someone who will treat you wonderfully, who it's effortless for you to treat them wonderfully as well. And I see this happen all the time. It is possible and it does happen. But let's look at some of the ways that that we sabotage this from happening. So I'm just going to go through and talk about each one of them with you guys. So the first deadly dating pattern is called crumbs. And as the name suggests, this means that you're giving your all and they're giving you crumbs. So this is the person that doesn't spend a lot of time with you. When they do spend time with you, it's around their schedule. When you're with them, usually you feel great. So this person excites you. Maybe you think that they're out of your league or they're better than previous relationships. They might take you to nice places, buy you things, be great in bed, be good looking. But when you look on a deeper level, you start to realize that they're doing most of this out of selfish reasons. Maybe even narcissistic, although I think that we overuse that word a little bit lately. But this person is selfish. They're really treating you in the opposite way of what you really want from a loving, lasting relationship, which is that they treat you as their priority and that they make you feel safe and cared for, and that they meet your needs consistently. If you're in a crumbs relationship or a crumbs pattern, they're not there for you when you need them, and they're always making it up to you. They're always missing time with you. If a woman dates a guy who is married or has another relationship, they're only going to get crumbs. And all of these patterns are negative and don't work out. So crumbs is the first one. The next one, which is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, is chase me. So I find that a lot of women that I work with, there's this spectrum of, on one end, it's somebody who is super independent, takes care of themselves, doesn't need anybody. And on the other end of the spectrum is someone who overgives and doesn't expect anything and doesn't have clear boundaries. Um, and of course, someone who would be right in the middle, who has a nice balance of giving and receiving, setting up boundaries and letting someone in, that person's probably going to end up in a healthy relationship. And that's what we strive to do through my coaching program and how I teach people how to get to that place of being able to have healthy communication. Um, so going back to Chase Me. So this one starts out with things unfolding perfectly with a guy, but almost a little too perfectly. Um, this is the woman who's really afraid of commitment. And as soon as things start to get serious, this might be when the guy says, I love you, or when you start talking about your future together, or leaving things at each other's place. Whatever that is, it creates so much fear and anxiety and panic that you run. And in the chase me pattern, it almost seems to happen against your will. Like you really want him to step up to the plate and scoop you up and claim you and say, shut up, you're being ridiculous. This relationship is amazing and I'm your man and you're my woman. But we don't set a guy up for success to do that. Instead, we become distant or quiet, or you act crazy and dump him. And again, this is out of really wanting him to step up, but that's not the way to get it. And this chase me pattern really comes from a fear of rejection or fear of getting trapped into an unhappy relationship. And so you push him away or reject him before you can get hurt. You might find that you love him, you hate him, you're neutral, you just don't care. And overall, you end up being distant or pushing him away. So that's the chase me. Similar to chase me pattern is not perfect, I'll pass. So if this is your pattern, then you've tried to date, but every time you start to date someone, you find something defective. So this might be that he's overweight, he's too cynical, he's too old, he's bald, he's a bad dresser, he's, doesn't have the right profession that I want. A lot of times it's little things too, like he chews and I can hear him chewing, or his hands are rough, or whatever it is, that one flaw becomes blinding and unavoidable, and it just completely turns you off. But in reality, you don't even give him a chance to emerge and be who he is, because in your mind, you already know that he's not good enough. And you probably haven't looked at it this way, but while you're hiding under the guise of Miss Picky, you're actually projecting your own feelings of insecurity and inadequacy on this guy. And you pull the plug on him before he can dump or reject you. So if your pattern is not perfect, I'll pass, you probably keep wondering why a woman like you, who has so much to offer, is still alone and single. All right, the next one is the flame out. So this is a very common pattern. This is where you meet a guy and there's tons of chemistry and you're so excited. He says all the right things. You have amazing sex together. You can talk for hours. You talk about the future and you start to think that he could really be the one. It just feels right from the very beginning, and you let your guard down and you jump all in, because that's what we've learned a lot of times, that in love, you just got to take chances and you just got to jump in. But the problem with this is it's too much too soon. It's called flame out for a reason. We want our relationships to burn like fire, to be passionate, but we don't want it to go whoosh, whoosh, and then flame out right away. We want to kindle and tend to the fire. We want to keep this fire burning for the rest of our lives. Um, so if your pattern is the flame out, then you're probably meeting someone who's really intimate and adoring at first. You find them irresistible from day one, and you feel a little bit out of control. And it's almost like you have this addiction. Like you have to hear from him, you have to see him, your mind obsesses about him. And that's a sign that you're not in a healthy relationship. Everyone should have a little bit of distance in the beginning just to make sure that you're taking the time to go through the appropriate steps to get to know someone before you go all in. There's a lot more I could say about that one, but for the purposes of this session, I just want to touch on each and every one of them so that you can see which ones do you relate to. Most likely you have one that really stands out. You might have two or three patterns that you've had with different men at different times in your life. And also there are deadly dating patterns for men too. And some of them overlap and are similar, but some of them are a little bit different. If we have time, we could touch on those, or maybe I'll do another session about those. All right, so we have crumbs, chase me, the flame out, and the hermit. So the hermit has become a lot more common over the last year due to quarantine. So the hermit is the person that might think someday I'll get around to having a relationship. And that sort of quells their anxiety about it. They're like, I don't even need that. I don't need anybody. I can take care of myself. And this person might find that they don't really have much drive to be in a relationship. They don't have much of a sex drive. They don't want to go online dating. They think it's the worst thing ever. They don't want to let their friend hook them up with this amazing guy they know. They're hiding out from looking for love, hiding out from accepting love. They might be super shy. They might be super controlling, or they might have just fallen into this pattern. Warning signs. If you get more pleasure out of watching a romantic comedy than actually flirting with guys or going on dates, then you might fall into this hermit pattern. Next is I'll make you love me. So this is when you meet a guy that you really like and you immediately start working overtime to get him. So in this pattern, you'll do anything to have this relationship work out. You'll be his cook, his therapist, his love slave, his savior. But what you're not being is authentic, because although you'd be embarrassed to admit it, you're hiding your true feelings and desires and boundaries because you think that if you speak up and say this, that you're going to be a drag on him and that he might leave you. Keep in mind that almost all of these patterns start out unconscious. You don't know that you're doing this. You don't realize that this is a pattern. You don't realize, the insecurity that's behind it. I know that I used to have the I'll make you love me pattern. I've done this and a couple other ones in the past where I found someone that, I was sick of dating guys who were beneath me. So I found someone that I thought was so amazing and he was, just not as into it. And I did the things that he liked and hung out with his friends. And, after a while in this pattern, you start to lose a bit of your identity. You start to lose a little bit of what you're passionate about and what makes you tick. And sometimes women fall into this for long-term relationships, marriages, where all of a sudden they realize, who am I without this person? Who am I without this life with this person? And that's a very tough place to be in when relationships fall apart, when divorce happens, when you have to start over again. You know, you have to really take a lot of effort to get to know yourself again and even reinvent yourself. A warning sign of the "I'll make you love me" pattern is that although you try to hide it, you feel unhappy about something almost all the time when you're with your partner. The next deadly dating pattern is just buddies. So this, you might think of a tomboy, although it doesn't have to be a tomboy. It's just somebody who has no trouble meeting guys, being friends with men. A lot of times they work in with a lot of men and they're just used to being in that friend zone. You get treated like one of the guys. Maybe you have similar interests like sports or cars, or you're a workaholic. But whatever it is, the defining factor is that even when you do like a guy, you don't know how to flirt. You don't know how to be girly and sensual or sexual with them. So warning sign, if the thought of getting dressed up and beautiful for your date just seems very strange and uncomfortable and not like you, um, then just buddies might be your pattern. I know someone who I used to work with that told me that she had an experience as a teenager where a guy that she liked her best friend, and he would come to her and talk to her about it, and she would give him advice. And it's funny how that one experience really shaped her life going forward, and she ended up with this pattern where she would always be friends with guys, and deep down she was always hoping that something would click in them and turn around and that they would be together. But that never happened because she just was not giving those kind of signals. She was giving them the signal that they're just friends. The next deadly dating pattern is the fadeaway. So in the fadeaway, this is someone who acts very well on dates. They're well behaved, well dressed, responsive, polite, they act interested, but then they never seem to get past one or two dates. So, what's actually happening is that this person is not comfortable in their own skin. They might be shy, they might be insecure and pretending to be something that they're not. They might try to be what men want, uh, but what they're not being is authentic, quirky, real, femininely spontaneous. You know, it's like there's so much in their head. I knew someone that had this pattern, and um, she was a very reserved person. But as I got to know her, she was very deep and she was very musical and talented. And she actually could sing opera and play piano. And so when she would get on stage, she would exude this amazing talent and draw people in. But when she would go on dates, she would just sit there, you know, very well behaved and say all the right things. And that's just kind of boring. And even if the guys don't know why, any specific reason why they're not interested, just the energy that gives out causes them to not be interested. It drives them away. You know, it also, when someone's in this fade away pattern where they don't get to date number two or beyond, they're often sending subtle no-go signals, like they're not being flirtatious, they're not touching, they're not opening up. And the guy's like, well, whatever, I guess this girl's not interested. So they move on. The next deadly dating pattern is the safety net. So, this is when you have a guy that's crazy about you, but you think he's just too nerdy, too crazy, he's uneducated, or he's unsuccessful. You're probably embarrassed to introduce him to your friends or your family. So, why date someone like this? Because they're safe. You might think that because he's beneath you that you have the power and that he'll never leave you. Uh, Plus, they're easygoing. They watch the movies that you want to watch. They cook for you. They do things for you. They're trying to win your approval. So there's a couple of possible outcomes with the safety net. One is you need to let him go. He's Mr. Right now, not Mr. Right. But you put it off. Um, you procrastinate, you agonize about hurting him, because deep down, a lot of times this comes from an insecurity of wondering if this is the best you can do. But eventually, in scenario one, you do end up breaking it off. You feel guilty. He feels hurt and used. And then you're also left feeling afraid of, oh God, did I let go of something good? And now, I'm left to the wolves and don't know what I'm gonna get. Uh, Scenario two with the safety net is this person starts to mature. They start to look better, act better, speak up more. Something kind of changes in them. You bring out the best in them. And all of a sudden, you're starting to introduce them to friends and go out with them in public. And someone else might show interest in them. And all of a sudden, you see something in them like, oh, wait, really? You think he's cute? Yeah, I guess he is kind of cute. And what happens in that scenario is typically the guy will realize that he's in a situation that's not serving him, that you are not treating him the way he deserves, and he leaves you and you feel bad. The third possible scenario with the safety net is that you evaluate this guy and realize, what the hell am I thinking? This guy's great. He's actually not that nerdy, and he's meets me where I'm at. And, at that point it becomes shit or get off the pot. Like, decide, is this your guy or is this not? Because you either let him go or you go all in, and make it the best relationship you can. And sometimes that can happen because women will be afraid. And so they think that it's a safe guy and they'll just test the waters. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, they're in love and they, see the person through rose colored glasses and see how great that person really is. Um, the next one is the fantasy relationship. So this is when you're obsessed with a guy who really has no romantic interest in you. This is the person that's obsessed with their ex, constantly talking about the amazing bond that we share, and how can I get him back? And they're obsessed with someone that they're not even in a relationship with anymore. Or this could be someone that you see a lot, like the guy that works at the deli that you see every day, or your coworker, and you end up concocting these elaborate stories about why that person is going out of their way to help you. And oh my God, he smiled at me today. And, um, oh, I think he has a crush on me too. But for some reason, you never act on it. And you ignore any signs that of a lack of interest. Your best friend who wants to snap some sense into you will say, well, did he ask you out? Well, no. Has he asked for your number? Well, no. Has he said he likes you? Well, no, but I just feel like, then you might be in a fantasy relationship. This could also be someone that you are talking with online who you've never actually met, and you just know that they're perfect for you. Or maybe this is a celebrity crush. Some women get really caught up in a celebrity crush, and it becomes a fantasy relationship. And the warning sign is that you're putting off your actual love life for this relationship. And meanwhile, you feel empty and sad. And if you're honest, you feel angry, rejected, heartbroken, by this so-called partner. So, so those, if you're in this fantasy relationship, there's steps that I walk my clients through to really close the lid on it and get over it so that they can move on and find something amazing. So we're down to the last few. The next one is the jealousy trap. So in this deadly dating pattern, you have a man that you could have something amazing with, but instead you're constantly worried about him with other women. This is not someone who has another woman who's married. For that, it would be the crumbs pattern. But in the jealousy trap, it's something from your past has caused you to believe that men are cheaters or players or men are no good. And most likely, you also are dealing with feelings of not being good enough. So you end up feeling jealous, being scared, being angry. You have paranoid thinking. You are sulking. You might have jabbing accusations at him. This is a really difficult pattern to be in because you always feel tense and irritable and upset. Your thoughts are always straying to this other woman and what your man could be doing with another woman instead of focusing on the relationship you have and making it the best that you can and having good communication and allowing him to meet your needs. So that's the jealousy trap pattern. Next is the grass is always greener. So if your pattern is the grass is greener, then you tend to be indecisive and afraid of making a choice about a guy. Because if you choose one guy, you get this sort of nagging feeling that you're going to miss out on something better later. You might feel comfortable in long distance relationships in this case because you could keep your options more open. You might be up and down about the guy, one minute thinking that he's the one, the next minute feeling trapped and resentful. And this one's just classic fear of commitment. Something in your past, something you've learned along the way, beliefs that you have are causing you to not really want a real full-on relationship. So if you're thinking, and analyzing your man and comparing him to other guys, either real or imagined, thinking that you could do better, then the grass is greener might be one of your patterns. The final pattern, and this one's really serious, is the abuse recycle pattern. So in this pattern, he seems amazing at first. He wins you over, but somewhere down the road, maybe even after marriage, you find out that he's super controlling or paranoid or just plain mean. He could be physically abusive. He could just be treating you badly with contempt, criticism. A lot of times in this scenario, a woman feels like she has to walk on eggshells, make excuses, try to change him, all the while avoiding the truth. And the truth is that this is dangerous. It could cost your life and you must get out of it. One of the common beliefs that can contribute to someone falling into this pattern is that they've grown up in an abusive situation. And a lot of times that can make someone feel like they're damaged goods, that this is all that they deserve. or, this person just doesn't trust people in general. So, warning sign, if you're in a relationship where you just tend to feel worse and worse about yourself the longer that you're with this person, then that's a sign that this is the abuse recycle deadly dating pattern, which could actually turn deadly. So, there are ways to get out. A lot of times with abuse, people tend to feel powerless. They feel unable to make a change in their life, which contributes to them staying in this pattern. So, those are the 13 deadly dating patterns for women. Again, they were crumbs, chase me, not perfect, I'll pass, the flame out, hermit, I'll make you love me, just buddies, the fade away, safety net, fantasy relationship, the jealousy trap, the grass is greener, and abuse recycle. So, in my coaching practice, I work with women typically for 4 months to start out with. We can go longer if they need, but we follow 5 steps. The first one is we assess. So where are you now? What have your patterns been? How has your past gotten to you to where you are? Then we plan, we set goals and intentions. Then we subtract and add. So subtract means we look at the core beliefs. We look at what's not serving you. We look at old patterns and ways of communicating, and we release them. And part of this is through an embodiment practice that I do. But before we can go to the next step, which is add, just like in a house, you can't unpack your house and your furniture and decorate and make everything beautiful until you first clean house, get rid of all the old stuff, clean out the cobwebs, dust. So that's why in my coaching practice, we first subtract, clean out all the bad stuff, then we add in the good stuff. What is healthy communication? How do I date? If you want to try online dating, what sites and how do I make a profile and how do I communicate with these guys? How do I weed out the bad ones so that I don't get stuck in one of these patterns again? And then the final step is love. So many of my clients do have a loving relationship by the end of our coaching practice, or if they're not in a relationship yet, they're at least ready for that relationship and they've done the internal work to get them there. And right now with COVID and quarantining and all of this is such a good time to do something like this, because this is a time for self-reflection, a time that we can spend to learn more about ourselves and get healthy so that when we are ready for the relationship of our dreams, that we've done the work required to make it last. So now we're open for questions. Love to hear from you guys and see what you think.
Yes. So, as always, Whitney, you have been so thorough. It's like amazing information that you're putting out there. But I was writing down a few questions on some of those key points because I really believe that in the few minutes that we have, I really believe that sometimes we're not even sure as to why we have or behave certain ways. And that's why I love your career of choice, because I always tell my nephews and that, in life, you could be successful in your career, but live miserably in relationships, which doesn't give you that balance of enjoying your career but never wanting to go home, or never wanting to go on a date. And so it's like sometimes we have these internal things, obstacle course this like internal obstacle course that we have to go through. And most of us never experience the joy of life because we don't have somebody that can say, hey, you know, you're repeating a bad cycle. Okay, stop. Here's where the brakes are. Like when you're, you know, when your parents were teaching you how to drive, right? They said those are the brakes, that's the gas. You know, if you want to accelerate, you press the gas. If you don't want to stop, you press the brakes, right? And so we don't you know, we don't see that. We don't see that kind of like going on when it comes to relationships. So what you're talking about right now in highlighting those key points, like these are some of the things that you might be doing that's causing you to press the gas when you should be pressing the brakes, right? One of
Yeah.
them was make I can make you love me.
Yeah. I'll
Right?
do whatever you want. That's
I'll do
basically
whatever
what
you
it
want,
is. I'll be
you
whatever you
know?
want, whoever you want, do whatever you want. You know,
Yeah.
just don't ever leave me. That's where that one stems from. It's I've been left before. Just don't ever leave me. I'll do anything.
And that seems to be connected to a whole deeper issue, right? You
Yes.
know, because if you can't, it just basically is saying if you really can't love yourself, then how are you going to expect, if you don't see the value in you, then and you're expecting somebody else to give you that value, you know, that's in total reverse. Because the moment they say, well, I don't see the value in you anymore, then you don't see the value in yourself. And
Yeah.
that's dangerous, even
Yeah.
for the next relationship.
Yeah. I
Right.
give people advice, even on date one, on any date that they go on. I say, your goal is not to be liked. Your goal is to be authentic.
Nice.
Just be yourself, show up as yourself no matter what, because either that person's not going to like you as yourself, which in that case you move on, or they're going to absolutely love you because you're yourself. If you're fake or watered down, that's just not going to create a spark. People aren't interested in that, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not like here's the thing about authenticity, right? You're going to have, if you're looking for a long-term relationship, then the person has to accept you for who you are. And if you're pretending to be Farrah Fawcett, you know, when you actually get into the relationship, you are eventually going to come out. Farrah
Yeah.
Fawcett is going to die. I mean, I'm showing my age right now, right? Farrah Fawcett, bing. But you know, but the point is eventually you're going to have to be authentic, you know, and life has a way of pulling that out. You know, when I get married, it will get better. Really?
Or
That's
worse, or worse,
oh,
we'll have a baby. That'll fix it.
oh yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, some of the things that we think about you know, is like you bring your car to the mechanic and you have a flat tire and he goes, well, you know, I'm going to change your engine too. I don't have a problem with my engine. I just have a flat tire. And some of us do major overhauls. As you were going through, you realize some of us do like major overhauls and things that we don't really need to work on
Yeah.
because we want the approval of somebody else.
Well, that's, another thing that I come across is there's no one size fits all dating advice,
Mhm.
because one person might be commitment phobic and their pattern is not perfect, I'll pass, and they're nitpicking every little thing and they're being too picky and they're pushing people away. Whereas, and so their advice would be keep the guy around longer, get to know him, let his personality come out, let down your walls, know that you are good enough, stop projecting your own insecurities. So the advice to someone who's doing crumbs would be the opposite, stop keeping him around so long, stop looking for all the good in him, stop letting things slide. So I find that people come to me confused a lot of times because they Google search and they look at YouTube videos and they look for good advice out there, but it's not personalized to them. And so this is where I start. I usually cover these dating patterns in the very first discovery call, which I do a 1 hour free discovery call with anyone who's interested in finding out more. And I will already in 1 hour tell them, here's your deadly dating pattern. Here's where it's coming from. Here's how I can help you. How we get through this, because it's important to know the baseline of where someone's starting in order to, know what kind of advice to give them.
Especially if they start out with the term, I need a man or I need a woman. You're like, problem number one.
I don't need a man. There's I tell women and men that needing love is not the same thing as being needy. Needing love is
Wow.
actually part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a basic human need to have love and
Right.
belonging. And so to feel like you need a man or need companionship, you don't want to be a damsel in distress that needs a man to take care of you and you can't take care of yourself and you can't do anything. But you also don't want to be the kind of woman that's like, I don't need a man. I could take care of myself. I don't need anyone. I don't need anything, because that's not reality. We do need love. In order to have a fully fulfilled, amazing life, part of that is having a loving relationship.
And that's the reason why a lot of us are just kind of going crazy with being isolated, because most meetings are happening, on Zoom.
Yeah.
So you're having to kind of learn to, I remember when you did the segment on like, meeting each other on Zoom and having those conversations where you're used to like that, if the person touches your hand, you kind of have that feel, you can judge that. And, I've watched Hitch. I think I know what I'm talking about. But you're the professional, right? But I mean, I remember in watching Hitch where he said like the first kiss for a female is like, the ultimate thing, right? So, I mean,
When you said that, Phil, I just got goosebumps like from head to toe just thinking about it.
Right? See, think about that.
So true. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, we'll tell you everything.
Yeah, and so it's like, it's almost like thrown off kilt, because you'd be able to sit down and go through the whole romantic aspect of at the dinner table, candlelight, all this stuff, but you don't get those aesthetics anymore. So it's really I know it probably is really difficult for people now, but that's why we have you.
Yeah.
So it's really great to have somebody that can walk you through and really guide you through that process. I really appreciate you coming on again. Everyone, get used to seeing Whitney because she is going to be back next week and at the same time. So this way you can know when to expect her on. And next time, ask questions, put it in the chat. We keep looking out for you to put it in on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you are. You can ask questions as well. Whitney, thank you again for sharing with us.
My pleasure.
And I guess we'll see you next week again, right?
Yes. See you next week.
Awesome. Right. So we'll see everybody next in a few hours, actually. Oscar is going to be back at 1:00. And he's going to be talking about security, peace of mind. So we'll see Oscar at 1.
I got one, not a question for Whitney, but an observation.
Okay.
That she said that now that everyone is quarantined, this is a good time to get together with her and really set up, okay, how do we go forward when we do start dating again? So, you're in the dugout now. Get all the information going. So when you're ready to run out onto the field, you're already, ahead of the game. So it's a good time to regroup and get with Whitney and find out how to get the game going when it comes back on.
There you go. Absolutely.
And people are dating now too. In fact, online dating usage is the highest it's ever been ever. I have clients that are actually going on dates, to this extent they're comfortable with masks, but I have people falling in love.
That's great though, because it's more authentic, I believe, because now you don't have the aesthetics to kind of like block everything else. Your senses aren't making the decision. You talked about that. I got that
Yeah.
from one of your segments. Your aesthetics is not what's helping you make the decision. You're really thinking through, is this person mentally compatible to who I am, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's important, because you'll make a better choice when you're not emotionally driven.
Yeah, and Zoom is limited. There's only so much we can do, but one of the positives is that we're talking more. We're
Mhm.
asking more questions. We're getting to know someone more deeply right out of the gate, and being able to make that decision, is this someone that's compatible with me or not? So
Exactly.
yeah, good stuff is
Absolutely.
happening.
So you can go to her website. It is, what is your
Hearthunterslovecoaching.com.
hearthunterslovecoaching.com. It is
And
on
you
the
can put
banner on the bottom of the screen. So feel free to reach out to Whitney on her website. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.